In the quiet hours before dawn, James Rowe, a 76-year-old Vietnam War veteran, would rise from his modest apartment at the end of Pine Street. His daily ritual began with a meticulous polish of his old military boots until they shone like mirrors of his past. With reverence, he would then hoist the American flag outside his door, a silent sentinel to his undying loyalty. Despite the relentless march of time, his routine remained unaltered through the scorching summer heat, the biting winter frost, holidays, or the days when arthritis gnawed at his joints. To the townsfolk, James was an enigma, often dismissed as the crazy old man living in the past. Children whispered tales of his ghostly battles, while teenagers, with a blend of mockery and ignorance, jeered at him from across the street. "Fighting invisible enemies, sir? The war ended 50 years ago." They'd mimic explosion sounds as he walked by. The neighbors, not out of malice but from an unspoken discomfort, averted their gaze, his silent dignity a mirror to their forgotten history. Yet amidst this sea of indifference, there was Mrs. Hernandez from the corner store, who had lost her grandson in Afghanistan. She alone acknowledged him, her eyes meeting his in a shared understanding of loss and honor. James never reacted to the derision, his face a mask of stoic resolve. He continued his daily pilgrimage to Memorial Park, picking up the litter left by careless visitors, his actions speaking louder than any words could. On this particular Tuesday morning, however, something unusual disrupted his routine, a summons to testify in a criminal case. The defendant was Malik Jefferson, a young black man accused of assaulting a police officer during what was described as a routine stop. Why would an elderly veteran like James be called to court? Before dawn, with the solemnity of a soldier preparing for battle, James carefully extracted his dress uniform from its protective plastic. The jacket, a tapestry of battles fought, bore stains of blood and memories. Though it hung looser on his frame now, James stood tall, his medals trembling under his fingers as he pinned them on. The weight of his past and the call of duty intertwined, compelling him to step into the courtroom and face a new kind of battle. As James entered the courthouse lobby, his faded beret was set at the exact angle military protocol demanded. A few young lawyers stifled snickers, and a security guard muttered just loud enough for others to hear, "This guy must be lost. Probably thinks he's at a Veterans Day parade." An attorney passing by whispered, "Halloween came early this year." Every word reached James's ears, his seasoned hands quivering slightly, yet his gaze remained fixed ahead. Dignity wasn't merely a word to him, it was the last legacy some of his fallen comrades had left behind. With a gentle tug, he adjusted his beret, steeled his spine against the creeping pain of arthritis, and strode towards courtroom 3. People watched, some even snapping photos. One mother drew her child closer, as if James's military service could somehow be transmitted. Upon entering the courtroom, James spoke not a word, his eyes avoiding contact with anyone. In his pocket lay a promise, decades old, remembered only by him. Have you ever witnessed someone demeaned for their appearance? Leave judgment at the door, for some were once ridiculed, but now deserve society's standing ovation. If you believe those stories should echo through the halls of justice, then listen closely. Inside, whispers still filled the air, questioning James's presence in this courtroom. Seated in the back, alone, his military posture remained unyielding against the hard bench. The defendant, Malik Jefferson, 24, with his hair closely cropped and eyes heavy with fatigue, sat at the defense table. His shoulders stiffened at the sight of the old man. The prosecutor, a woman with meticulously crafted gestures, announced with unwavering confidence, "The defendant assaulted Officer Richard Brennan and incited public disorder during a legitimate police action. The evidence is undeniable." She clicked through slides, displaying Malik's past speeding ticket and a school suspension from his 9th grade year. As the gavel fell, signaling the end of the prosecution's case, an air of routine dismissal hung over the courtroom. The judge, seemingly disinterested, checked his watch, another open and shut case in a system that processed hundreds monthly. Malik's public defender, overwhelmed by the burden of 47 active cases, had barely exchanged words with his client before the hearing, offering a defense that felt more like a formality than a fight for justice. But then, a twist. The defender, adjusting his tie with newfound purpose, announced, "The court calls Mr. James Rowe, former commander of Bravo Company, 25th Infantry Division. The courtroom buzzed with sudden interest. The judge, previously slouched in disinterest, sat up, his eyes wide with surprise, as if jolted by a name from a distant past. As James Rowe stood, a remarkable scene unfolded. Every guard in uniform, as if pulled by an invisible string, rose to attention. Their backs stiffened, chins lifted in a silent salute. Among them, Sergeant Martinez, his nameplate shining under the fluorescent lights, displayed a look of instant recognition and deep respect. A murmur swept through the gallery. "Who is this man?" James approached the witness stand with measured, deliberate steps, his polished shoes clicking rhythmically against the silent floor. After taking the oath, his voice, seasoned by time yet firm with conviction, broke the silence. "I witnessed the entire incident on Tuesday, April 15th, at approximately 2:43 p.m. Malik Jefferson did not assault anyone. He verbally intervened when Officer Brennan was using excessive force against a homeless veteran who was in the throes of a seizure." The defense attorney then presented a video from a coffee shop security camera across the street at an angle the prosecution had overlooked. It confirmed every detail James had recounted. The atmosphere in the courtroom transformed. Skepticism gave way to astonishment. The prosecutor, visibly flustered, objected. "Your Honor, this witness wasn't on our list until yesterday. We question his reliability and mental acuity given his advanced age." Yet the courtroom, now a theater of justice, awaited the truth, eager to see where this unexpected turn would lead. James didn't flinch at the insult. His gaze remained steady, unwavering. The judge leaned forward, his glasses removed, and with a voice tinged with curiosity, he asked, "Mr. Rowe, why should the court consider your testimony reliable?" In response, James reached into his breast pocket, his fingers brushing against the worn edges of a small, leather-bound notebook. "Because I've chronicled every injustice I've witnessed over 53 years, Your Honor," he declared, his voice firm yet touched with the weight of years. Date, time, location. I was there when Officer Brennan struck the homeless man, his medical alert bracelet shining under the streetlight. I was there when Malik stepped between them, his voice raised not in anger but in defense. The courtroom fell into a profound silence, the usual rustle of papers replaced by a palpable tension. "And why," the judge continued, now fully engaged, "would you come forward for this young man you apparently don't know?" James's eyes locked with Malik's across the room, a gaze that carried the weight of unspoken history, a connection that seemed to span generations. "I know him better than most, Your Honor," James replied with a quiet authority. "I once led 134 men in Bravo Company. More than half never came home. When you've commanded men in combat, you learn to discern the protector from the aggressor." The courtroom was now utterly silent. Even those who had previously scoffed at his uniform sat spellbound. The defense attorney, curiosity piqued, asked, "Commander Rowe, why exactly did you come forward to testify today?" James slowly reached into his uniform pocket, his movements deliberate, and extracted a photograph encased in plastic. It was a picture of young Malik, no more than 9, standing in a suit too large for him, solemnly holding the precisely folded American flag at his father's military funeral. "Because Michael Jefferson was the last man from my unit to die in Vietnam," James said, his voice breaking the heavy silence with its gravity. A collective gasp swept through the room, the prosecutor's pen clattering to the floor in the sudden quiet. "Staff Sergeant Michael Jefferson," James added, his words echoing like a solemn vow. On that fateful April 30th, 1975, as the war reached its crescendo, James's voice held firm, yet a subtle twitch in his jaw betrayed his inner turmoil. "We were in the thick of evacuating civilians from Saigon," he recounted. In a moment that could have been his last, Michael thrust him into a drainage ditch, narrowly escaping the explosion of a grenade that had targeted his very spot. Malik, ever the stoic, finally cracked, his eyes wide with horror, his lips trembling in disbelief. James's narrative continued, painting a vivid picture of chaos and sacrifice. As Michael lay dying, with helicopters roaring above and the city crumbling around us, he made just one request of me, James said, his voice thick with emotion. To watch over his son, born just 3 months earlier, a son he longed to meet, whose photos he had carried through the dense, unforgiving jungle for 2 years. For nearly half a century, James honored that promise with a quiet reverence. From afar, he observed Malik's life unfold, attending school functions, sitting unobtrusively in the back, his presence as silent as a shadow. When Malik's mother struggled under the weight of 2 jobs, James anonymously covered the costs of his college applications. When I heard Malik was in trouble, I knew I had to step in, James declared, his resolve unwavering. He leveraged connections from his military days, calling in favors from those who still remembered the valor of Bravo Company's leader. The judge, moved by the depth of James's commitment, removed his glasses, his eyes glistening. "You've been this young man's guardian angel his entire life?" he asked, clearly touched. "Yes, Your Honor," James replied. "He doesn't know me, has never met me, but I know him. I was there, in the last row at his high school graduation, watching as he stepped into the world. And I know, without a shred of doubt, he possesses his father's moral courage, stepping in to protect the vulnerable, regardless of the risk." The prosecutor, intrigued, pressed, "If you've been watching over him as you claim, why have you never approached him directly before today?" James answered with a conviction that filled the courtroom. Because a promise doesn't require recognition to be kept, it only needs to be honored. His words hung in the air, stirring the hearts of several jurors, each pondering the depth of such silent dedication. In the courtroom, the atmosphere was thick with the weight of silence, broken only by the stifled sobs of those moved by the unfolding drama. The chief of police, his face etched with the realization of a grave error, closed his eyes, perhaps seeking solace in the brief darkness. The defense attorney, with a voice that trembled with conviction, presented the unedited body cam footage, the raw truth that the prosecution had so conveniently clipped away. In this unaltered video, the scene was clear. Malik, with a courage that belied his youth, stepped between Officer Brennan and an elderly homeless veteran, his military jacket a testament to past service. "Sir, please stop." Malik's voice rang out, urgent yet respectful. "He's not resisting. He's having a seizure. Look at his medical bracelet." The footage then captured Officer Brennan's aggressive shove, the moment misconstrued as assault in the edited version. Judge Harrison, his voice a solemn echo in the quiet, announced, "In light of this evidence and testimony, I am dismissing all charges against Mr. Jefferson immediately." As James descended from the witness stand, something truly remarkable occurred. No one sat down. The spectators, the court reporter, even the judge himself, everyone remained on their feet, a silent, profound tribute to justice served and truth unveiled. Malik, his release official, turned to James, his tears a river of relief and gratitude. "You knew my father? You actually knew him?" he asked, voice quivering with emotion. James, his military posture softening, nodded once. "He was the bravest man I ever met. Why didn't I ever tell you all these years?" He echoed Malik's question, his own voice breaking. "Some debts," James whispered, his gaze distant, "can never be repaid. They can only be passed forward." With that, he bowed his head slightly, as if the weight of his testimony was just another duty discharged, and walked towards the door. Behind him, the courtroom remained standing, a sea of silent figures, including the judge who had shed his robe in a gesture of respect. If you've ever made a promise you still hold dear, write promise. As the sun cast its warm glow over the neighborhood, few residents paused to read the heartfelt tribute in the local newspaper, titled "The Man Who Made an Entire Courtroom Stand." Those who did, however, snipped it out and preserved it as a testament to valor. James, the humble hero at the story's center, returned to his modest abode, where his routine remained untouched by fame. Every morning he polished his boots, raised the flag, and picked up litter in the park, his life a quiet testament to duty and honor. Then, on a morning like any other, a hesitant knock sounded at his door. It was Malik, standing there with a box of donuts and a cup of coffee, his expression a blend of nervousness and respect. "I wasn't sure what to bring," he admitted with a shy smile. "May I come in?" Inside James's living room, sparse yet filled with memories, was a gallery of young men in uniform, forever young, their faces captured in time. Dominating the center shelf was a photograph of Michael Jefferson, Malik's father, standing proudly beside James, both clad in jungle fatigues. "He looks just like me," Malik whispered, his fingers brushing the cool glass. "He saved my life," James stated, his voice heavy with simple truth. "Now, I've returned the favor. Malik's visits became a weekly ritual every Sunday afternoon. He began to call James Father James, a title that brought an uncharacteristic shimmer to the old soldier's eyes, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they shared. The neighborhood teenagers, once dismissive of the crazy old veteran, now watched in respectful silence as Malik, now a law student, walked with James, hanging on his every word. The local police chief, moved by the story, personally apologized to both men. Officer Brennan faced suspension and was reassigned to community service at the Veterans Center, a fitting penance for past misunderstandings. 6 months later, when James didn't raise his flag at the usual 6 a.m., concerned neighbors found him, his face serene, his spirit at peace, clutching a photo of his old unit. At his door, they found a small wooden box with a note that read, "I never needed anyone to know who I was. I only hope everyone would live so they wouldn't feel ashamed when standing before a silent man." Inside, nestled among the memories, was his Purple Heart Medal, a quiet symbol of his valor and sacrifice. The gallery, their voice dripping with derision, yet in that very courthouse where justice was served, a simple bronze plaque now whispers a different truth. It reads, "Judge not by appearances, but by the measure of honor within." At the annual Veterans Day parade, the townsfolk can't help but notice a distinguished civil rights attorney, his suit impeccable, sitting beside a grave, tenderly polishing a Purple Heart medal. With each gentle rub, he shares with his children the tale of two men, a father he never met, and a silent guardian whose actions bridge the chasm of time. Don't judge people by their attire, but by the palpable shift in the atmosphere when they enter a room. James Rowe, the quiet hero, did not chase after fame. Instead, he honored an old promise, a pledge that in its simplicity rescued a young man from being buried under the weight of prejudice. In a world bustling with noise and chaos, there are those like James who tread softly, yet command the silent respect of an entire community. True honor isn't about the medals pinned to a chest or the uniforms draped over shoulders. It's about the silent vows we keep when the world turns its back. The most eloquent witnesses in life's courtroom are often those who speak the least but observe with the keenest eyes. If you've ever known a soul like James, don't let their legacy fade into oblivion. Sometimes a single witness can alter the course of a life. And the deepest form of courage? It's not found in the spectacular deeds, but in the daily steadfast commitment to those who can no longer speak for themselves. In the end, our lives are not measured by the titles we claim or the accolades we collect, but by the promises we keep, especially when they are inconvenient or forgotten by everyone else. Is he really wearing that to court? Someone scoffed. But in the eyes of those who truly see, James Rowe wore the finest robe of all, integrity. He trudged by, past the benches, his old uniform with its frayed shoulders and his faded beret. The veteran, silent, endured the scornful glares. But oh, the gasp when he swung open the courtroom door. Everyone leaped to their feet, not for formality, but for a revelation that would shake them to their core. Thank you, dear viewers, for joining us on this journey. Your engagement means the world to us. Please leave a comment with your thoughts, give us a like if you felt the emotion, share this story, and consider subscribing for more heart-stirring tales. Your support fuels our passion to continue sharing these poignant narratives.